This is the capstone project that I did at Bick Elementary. I did a professional development series over the DSA and a running record training. And my goal was to increase instructional capacity for differentiating reading and writing supports in the classroom. A little bit about our school. We are located in the west end of Louisville in the Russell neighborhood. We have a 93% free reduced lunch program rate. We have almost a 95% attendance rate. This year we're partnering with national boards to incentivize our teachers to earn their national board certifications. We're also partnering with U of L for continued support in the multi-tiered support system for behavior. Many of our students have experienced 2 or more ACEs, and if you're not familiar with that, that's adverse childhood experiences. So many of our students come from a background of trauma. We are a trauma-informed school, and what that means is that our entire staff has undergone several trainings to come to a shared understanding of what the definition of trauma is, what trauma triggers look like for students, and how we can create a safe learning environment. So our school needs and our priorities are in the 2016-2017 school year, 71.5% of our students were novice in reading and 51.6% were novice in writing. When looking at our end of year progress monitoring reports, 75% were below grade level and 72.6% were below expected level in our MAP scores. So, some observations after analyzing the data was through a united school effort, we've really been able to enhance our core instruction. We've really been able to tighten that up since years past. We actually showed an impressive amount of growth from the 2016-2017 K-Prep scores to the 2017-2018 K-Prep scores. We actually just exited priority status this year, and therefore to keep our momentum going, we really need to focus now on how to differentiate instruction for all of our students. So the goal of this PD was and is to provide our teachers with quality research-based assessments that will drive home differentiated instruction. So the first professional development series was over the DSA. That's the developmental spelling assessment. There was 3 sessions. On October 25th, we talked about in PLCs how to administer the DSA. You can see an example to the right. It's 25 words that you dictate to students to spell, and you are looking for the features of orthographic knowledge that students are attending to, and those are delineated by the letters at the end of each of the lines. It's not a complicated test to give, but because it is long and often students have some anxiety about spelling anyway, it's important that you prep them in the right way so that they are in the right frame of mind to take the test. On the second session, which was on Gold Day on November 5th, we talked about analyzing the assessment. I mentioned briefly that you are looking for the features of the written language that students are matching from their verbal speech. So, for example, on this graded assessment, you see features A, B, C, D, and E. Those features correspond to initial and final consonants, initial digraphs and blends. Short vowels is feature C. Feature D is affricates, and feature E is final consonant blends and digraphs. So this, again, is not that complicated to analyze, but if you don't have someone walking you through it, it can be a bit muddy. So when we did this training, we graded this example that you see to the right together under the document camera. And once teachers had a clear understanding of how to analyze the assessment, they brought their completed assessments with them, and they had some work time and were able to actually analyze their assessments during our Gold Day session. Myself and some other teacher leaders were walking around answering questions and doing some problem solving. So that was a really successful session because I felt like our teachers really understood the purpose of analyzing this assessment and how to do it. The last session for this series was November 13th, and that focused on the next steps for instruction. Once our teachers had analyzed their assessments, they were ready to start forming groups for their students and addressing some of the needs that their assessments told them were necessary for instruction. We covered 3 research-based strategies that can be tailored from kindergarten all the way up to 5th grade. We covered Elkonin boxes or sound boxes. We talked about making words, and we also delved into word sorts and analogy charts. The second professional development series hasn't happened yet. It's coming up in January. Because we really wanted to give our teachers plenty of time to really take on the new learning, we didn't want to cram everything into December. So we decided to split the trainings up into before the holidays and after the holidays. So coming up in January, on the 9th, we're going to talk about the administration and coding of a running record. That will take some practice. It takes practice for everybody. There's a lot of different coding marks that symbolize different behaviors of oral reading of a student. And that will take place in PLCs. We'll probably use the whole hour to learn how to code a running record. The second session on January 22nd will happen in staff meeting. That's where we're going to analyze a few running records together, and we're going to talk about what specific cues students are attending to when they're reading. You can either attend to meaning, structure, or visual, and we want teachers to understand some of the behaviors that we're striving to instill in students when they're reading. Can they integrate all of the cues? Can they monitor their own responses? Can they self-correct their responses? And what can you do when they're not attending to a certain cueing system? On February 6th will be the final session. That will be during PLCs, and we'll talk about the next steps for instruction. Before designing this series, I sent out a school-wide survey asking teachers to rate their comfort level in using these assessments to plan instruction. And I found that the level of proficiencies were pretty varied. So I knew that I was going to have to differentiate the professional development. So 3 things that I did to ensure that teachers were getting the supports that they need are the proficient teachers became teacher leaders. There's a core group of teachers mostly concentrated in kindergarten and 1st grade that are really proficient in using these assessments within their instruction. These teachers became teacher leaders in that they went around during the PD sessions and helped me answer questions and provide a higher level of support for teachers who were struggling or just had more individualized questions. I also assigned team leads for accountability. We all get busy, and I was worried that if we didn't have someone checking in, that possibly we wouldn't have our assessments done on time to analyze on November 5th. It seemed to work really well because on November 5th, all of our teachers came with their assessments ready and they were set to analyze. Also, at the end of session 3, I followed up with individual teachers based on requests. I did some individual planning. I modeled some of the strategies that we went over and provided extra support for more individualized questions. So next steps for the school, we need to continue to use the DSA to inform the orthographic needs of our students and to provide differentiated instruction. We need to continue to use and build our confidence with research-based strategies that were presented in session 3, the Elkonin boxes, making words, and the word sorts and analogy charts. And we need to move forward in January with the professional development on running records. Personal goals, I need to follow up with the staff then that requires more individualized development. I need to offer to model lessons with the strategies. I need to start developing the running record training number 1, which will be administering and coding a running record. I need to analyze the survey results after the completion of both professional development series to see who needs more follow-up and to analyze the success of the PDs. Lastly, I plan to complete a self-reflection on the process of presenting and coaching in both of the professional development series.